So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We do have a lot of experts in the room. So like I said, if you all have questions, definitely put them in the chat. We can talk at the end for questions. We have a whole team that wants to see you succeed and support you. So just let us know what you need. Everything's very informal. Like I said, don't be afraid to ask the question or reach out because we are here for you. All right, so we have a couple, it looks like 5 session goals for this session as well. So we're going to go ahead and reflect on motivations and challenges. So you personally, what are your motivations and challenges? We'll have Joy talk a little bit about how to start thinking about that. And then resetting expectations about balance. So what does the word balance mean? And what does it really mean when you're working, going to school, you have kids, you take care of your parents, you have animals, all the things. And what does balance really mean in regards to that? And then refocusing on actionable strategies. So what can we do to kind of create that budget or that balance and make things work? And then we want to make sure you leave with some resources and then feel more confident after the session. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first real poll. Let's see, I'll go ahead and start it. So which of these session goals do you hope to get the most out of? Go ahead and answer the poll real quick here. Okay, getting some resources, actionable strategies. Looks like those two are tied. We have some people answering, reflecting about their motivations and challenges, resetting expectations about balance. All right. Refocusing on actionable strategies seems to be the leader right now, but definitely kind of a mixed bag there of what people are hoping to get out of the session. Give a couple more seconds here. We have almost everybody has answered the poll. Okay, we got one person said feeling more confident. There you go. It can be a little bit daunting starting, an online program and going back to school for sure. So, all right, we're gonna go ahead and end the poll. I'll show it to you real quick. So as you can see, 38% refocusing on actionable strategies, followed by leaving with resources, and then resetting expectations and reflecting on motivations were the next two. And then we did have someone say they want to feel more confident. So for sure, thank you so much, everybody, for answering that poll. Hopefully we can get some of those skills built up there. All right. And I'm going to turn it over to Joy for life crafting.
All right, so I'm going to start with just you. You can do a reaction in Zoom. You can put it in chat. Do I have any crafters in the room? People who like to take on a good crafting project. Maybe you're a quilter, maybe you're a woodworker. Seeing some hands raised. Oh, I see nails coming out. So if you're a crafter, put a little reaction in the Zoom or put it in chat. Um, but I think a good craft is always a good thing. I think crafting is something that it's enjoyable to see something produced. Um, but I wanted to ask you a question. How successful would you be in crafting if you had no idea what the goal was? Like, how successful would you be in your crafting project if you didn't know if you were going to woodwork, if you didn't know if you're going to quilt, if you didn't know you're going to be a Cricut wizard, if you just went into a room and said, I want to craft? What does that look like? We don't normally go into something we want to do with like, I want to craft. We usually like, I want to do this thing. But so often in life, we don't use those same skills. We say, oh, I want to have a life well lived. But what does that mean to you? What does a life well lived look like? We say that's what we want, but we don't always take the time to figure out what that means. And you can't have a good life craft if you don't craft your life itself, if you don't have something that makes you go, this is what I'm shooting for. So, what I want to start with is framing what time management looks like, because time management without a goal in mind is really a challenge to do. So, we're going to talk a little bit about shifting your focus from what an external expectations are is, oh, I've got to go to college because everybody has to go to college. No, why do you need to go to college? What is your motivation? How does this fit into your life goals? Asking yourself the question, what do I want life to look like? How am I defining success? For those who jumped on early, I've kind of started to question whether anything anybody says is really like a has to or a choice. So I know that these are big questions, and I will tell you by the end of the session, you are not going to have answers to those questions, but I think it's important that you start to ask yourself these questions. What is it that I'm shooting for as an end goal? What is it that's motivating me to do this? What is my roadblock that's keeping me from doing that? Because time management in the absence of having a goal at mind is a really hard thing to do. So we're going to start to explore some of these concepts at the beginning, knowing full well you'll probably walk out with more questions than you will answers, but I will tell you, questions are the key to a really successful process. So you get to decide what life looks like and you get to decide what it wants to be. So how do we do this? And one of the concepts that's out there, Kariana, you can go ahead and move forward, is this concept of Aikikai. And some people may have heard that. Some people, it may be completely new to you. But this came to popularity when people started doing research into what's called blue zones. And blue zones are areas where people have an incredibly long life compared to what is elsewhere in the world. And one of the things that came to light was this idea of a life purpose, having a reason for being. That is the what Aikikai stands for. And it's putting components together that you're not just living life, but you're really living with an idea of reason for being. Now, there's other ways to craft your life, but I love this one because it was an easy visual. Like, this is an easy visual. I encourage you to go do more research, to go find things, but for me, this made a lot of sense. And so, what it says is to get to your life purpose, to get to your Aikikai, which is the center of that chart, you need to focus on what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs, and start to answer those questions. And you can't just take part of it, because if you just said, oh, what the world needs and what I can get paid for, that's a vocation and you can feel very excited about it. But there also could be a deep sense of uncertainty if that was all you focused on. If you focus on what you can be paid for and what you're good at, that's a profession. And you might be comfortable with your life, but you might feel empty. So, what this is really saying is look at the entirety of your life and start to go, what is it that all of this comes together? And what I will tell you is college is not going to define your Ikigai in and of itself. College is a tool that helps you to get to answers to these questions, and it should be used as that tool. For example, if you're going through, and I'm sorry, accounting majors, I'm going to pick on you because accounting is not my strong suit. If you're sitting through accounting 230 and you're crying at every problem set, that probably is not something that you love, and you might consider other alternatives. That doesn't mean college isn't for you. It just might mean accounting is not for you. And I can only say that because me is laughing like crazy. She was an accounting major. I'm a history major. If you asked me to do one more look at an Excel chart with how the numbers all lined up, I would fail miserably. So, oh, thank you. I did see you. So, yes, this is part of this whole conversation. College is the way that drives you to this. It doesn't automatically give it to you at the end of your college education. You don't walk out with a degree and say, now I have also achieved Ikigai. It is two separate things, but they run in parallel. So to give you an example in my life, because I'm always an example person, as you can tell, I have to move my hands and I talk a lot and I talk quick. So guys, I'm sorry, this is just who I am. This is why I don't do accounting, because accountants would be like, please put your hands down and slow this thing down. But you get who I am. So what do I love? I love learning through constant exploration and adventure. I love to go on adventures to national parks. I love to try to figure out how do you schedule a trip that has the maximum amount of enjoyment. I love to read books and see how they overlay with how life works. I love adventure and I love exploration. What am I good at? Well, I'm really good at connecting dots and finding patterns with peoples and processes. So I can look at something and I can diagnose and say, oh, this dot connects to this over here, and then we could do this over here, and then this thing could end up over here. One of my jobs was actually to help build our Slate CRM process, which is all about connecting data points. And even though I hate accounting, I know data and I know how this point and this point and this point all connect together to create a process. What does the world need? Well, I think the world needs pathways to find a different way of living life. And that's what I feel like I am good at describing. It's a different way, a pathway, a way for you to get there. And what can I get paid for? I can get paid for strategy and creative thinking. So for me right now, I'm feeling like I'm living in the center of my geeky guy. It's a really kind of a fun place to be because I've found a job, a profession, a thing that I love that help fulfill all of those pieces. Right now in this room, I'm getting to share with you guys pathways. We're talking about how to connect the dots. I'm loving this adventure and learning experience. and I'm getting paid for it. So this is kind of a fun space for me. Now, what I will say is sometimes you have to reframe what you're in because my what I got paid for actually did a radical shift. And at first I felt very insecure about it. But then as I started to realize what my potential was and started to really wrestle with it, I was able to move myself back into that center. I'm like, I am really living in a spot where I'm living where I get to feel a reason for being. Now, it's taken time. I'll tell you, I probably have been around this earth a few more times than you have. I've got a few more years underneath my belt. 18-year-old Joy Thompson, 22-year-old Joy Thompson, 30-year-old Joy Thompson, 40-year-old Joy Thompson was not experiencing this moment. So what I will say is if you're going, I don't know, that's okay. Part of the process is figuring it out and allowing yourself to have that exploration. So that kind of gives you an idea of how to find a reason for being. But let's talk about what some steps that you could do. And I want to kind of explore the idea of 5 whys. Now, 5 whys came about in the early days of the Toyota Motor Company, actually. They actually had a process, a methodology that said you got to ask yourself 5 whys before you come to the conclusion for the problem. So you have a problem, you ask why, and then you say why, and then you say why, and then you say why. And so Cariana, did remind me of the Backstreet Boys. So why are we asking why? We're asking why because we never want to hear you say, I wanted it that way. So you're going to ask the why so that you can build a life that's well lived. And why? And if you don't ask the whys, well, sorry guys, it's nothing but heartache. So asking whys is a way for you to find your motivations, find your roadblocks, and start to identify all those things that might lead to your guy. This is not the only way, but again, I'm trying to give you guys some actionable strategies because that's what you asked for about how you can start to explore these concepts. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So start with your why. Oops, we went too far. Cariana, can we go back one? There we go. So the question is, why do you want to complete your degree at WSU Global? And we're going to walk through it. I want a better job. Common answer. Why do you want a better job? Well, I want to stop working weekends. Well, why do you want to stop working weekends? Because I'm working full 5 to 7 days a week and it feels empty. Well, why does it feel empty? Because I want to have time when my family is free. I want to open up my time so I am free when my family is free. And why is that important to you? Because my family needs me. That is a purpose statement. That is one of those things that you can go, this is what the world needs. My family needs me. It starts to fill in your chart of your Ikigai. So some of these motivations, some of these thoughts, some of these problems are things that as you start to ask the why, you can start to walk through that process as identifying your Ikigai, of figuring out what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, what the world needs. Now you can also use whys to figure out your roadblocks. So if we can go to the next slide, Cariana. Okay, here's the big one. Why am I procrastinating on this paper? Why can't I seem to get it moving? Well, why? It feels overwhelming. Well, why does it feel overwhelming? Well, I'm really not sure where to start. Well, why aren't you sure where to start? Well, I don't know where to start because the end goal seems way too big. Well, why does the end goal seem too big? Because I'm afraid at failing at something that's important to me. Well, why is that there? Because it's I tie my self-worth to my accomplishments. So it's not that you're bad at writing papers. It's not that you're bad at motivation. There's something else going on besides just what you think it is. Often we tell ourselves a story, I can't write a paper because I'm bad at it. That's not necessarily to answer the question. Start asking yourselves the why, and you might be able to identify it. We have time at the end. I forgot to pull them out. But we're going to talk about how to deal with some of these roadblocks. And one of them is by journaling. So asking yourself the whys in a journal. If we have time at the end, I'll pull out Ralph, my cool down journal. He's my best bud. He is a Tyrannosaurus Rex wearing headphones and smiling and giving the peace sign. Because internally there's like a roaring Tyrannosaurus Rex in me that wants to like explode at the world. And if I use my cool down journal, Ralph the cool down journal, and ask the whys, I avoid that from happening. So if you run into these roadblocks, you might journal. If you're running into mental health challenges, we have resources like Timely Care that allows you to work through some of these. You could do tutoring, you could do mentoring. There's lots of resources for you. But if you just think it's because you're bad at it, you never can find the resource to actually help yourself get through it. If you ask yourself the whys, then you can find the resources to be able to help you through. So that's kind of the big picture of, okay, I'm going to find my geeky guy. I'm going to ask these whys. You're going to have it all figured out by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, I'm sure, but no, just kidding. I know it's not going to be fixed by tomorrow, but this is some of that framework you should start working through to figure out how to make your life work. And so the next thing I'm going to talk about is let's talk about its balance versus budget. So what I will say is we often say we want to have a work-life balance, a school life balance, a whatever balance. And balance is this teetering act. It ensures you have time, energy, and resources across all life's domains. But I feel like with balance, you always are on a teeter-totter waiting for something to not work quite right. What I'd like you guys to start thinking about is time management isn't about balancing, it's about budgeting. It's about budgeting what you have for your resources for what's your most important to you. So you can make some choices to not just say, okay, well, I only have so many hours in the day. Well, you can budget a little bit different. So you can create a structured plan for your money, for your time, for your other resources to specifically reach your goal. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next slide. But it doesn't have to be a teeter-totter where you're always feeling like, oh, I just don't quite have it. You can actually be very strategic and make a budget for your life that time is a component of it. Time can be bought, time can be spent, just like money can be spent, money can be gained. You can do the same thing with time. So balance kind of leads to burnout, where budgeting is a pathway away for you to get there. So let's talk a little bit about budgeting time. So we're going to put this in the chat. You can also just think about it some, but what are some resources that provide you time? So for example, if you went out to eat for dinner, that cuts down on the amount of time you have to do for meal prep, and you might be able to buy back time. What are some other resources that could buy time? And I'm going to open up the chat. Rebecca, am I missing anything so far that I need to respond to?
I don't think so.
Okay,
If there's specific resources you want us to pop in there, Joy, let me know.
that's great. You can, if you hear something, pop them in because I wasn't that organized, Rebecca. Wouldn't that have
Okay.
been a better choice? I didn't budget my time well, guys.
If I can find it, I'll put in I think it's the 149-hour log that I've
Okay,
used before that I really like if anyone's interested in
perfect.
tracking their time. It's been helpful.
All right. So Elizabeth, I see that you say you can delegate chores. Yes, that is a way to buy back time. If you're always the chore person, but you have someone else who can help with the chores, that's an ability to buy back time. Cariana also says that her sister babysits the puppy demon. Yes, that is a way to buy back time. If Cariana is not focused on the puppy demon, then she has some time to buy back. So we do have resources at our disposal. You have relationships, you have money, you have efficiencies that maybe you can create where you're like, oh, if I did this and this together, that would buy me back some time. So you can actually make a plan for your time. Imagine if you came into school and you looked at your week and said, okay, or sorry, looked at your whole school schedule and said, okay, I know this week at work has a whole bunch of pressures for getting projects done. I also know a paper is due, and Cariana is going to help you figure out how to map your syllabus. I also know my kids have a basketball game. All of a sudden, that becomes a red week. You have very limited time and you have a lot of things to get done. So imagine you save your money to go out to dinner that week. Imagine you ask your sister to go to the basketball game for you because you can't make it. Imagine that you made a plan ahead of time so that instead of walking into that week completely unprepared, you've spread out your resources and you've spread out what you have available to you to be able to make an action plan to make that work. Balance says you walk up to it and you're like, oh, what do I do to do all of this? Budget says, I'm going to make a plan. So the thing about resources that you have is with any resource, there's an investment and there's a withdrawal. So for example, you only have so many dollars in the week. You only have so much money that you can spend. So what I'm going to say for all those people who have financial aid refunds burning in your pocket, you only have so much refund left. What if you save some of that to buy yourself time later in the semester? What if you set aside a chunk of money to say, hey, you know what? This is my going out fund, or hey, this is my grocery fund that I know that I'm going to buy a meal. Oh, I've lost the name. Fresh. Someone help me here. I'm losing it. When you buy the pre-made groceries where it's all planned out for you and it has a recipe.
Lean, oh,
Hello Fresh.
HelloFresh.
HelloFresh. Yes, thank you, people. I have lost my word, but imagine you save it for HelloFresh. Imagine with your sister who's going to watch the Demon Puppy. Imagine if instead of having her ask it every week, you saved it for the weeks that you need it so you didn't become too much of an imposition on your sister. Imagine that you knew you were going to have to make a withdrawal from your relationship with your mom who's going to watch the kids. Imagine if you wrote her a thank you note ahead of time or you took her out to coffee before it was crunchy. Then you've invested in that relationship so that you can buy back time. Now, I know this is a little bit different way of thinking about it, but we really do have the ability to control our lives. Stephen Covey has said time management is a misnomer. The challenge is not managing time, but to manage ourselves. I also want to talk about you can make deals with time, guys. I know we coupon, well, we might not have any couponers in here, but we all look at the deals. We try to go to the Amazon Prime days. You can make deals with time. What if you rode the bus and read the book at the same time as compared to driving to work? Yes, it took you a little bit more time, but every minute you had on that bus, you could read your book. What if you took 15 minutes on your way home from work and instead of going directly home, you got an errand done real quick so you didn't have to do it on Saturday so that you could buy back time? You can make deals. You can coupon. I'm a good coupon coder and I'm like, okay, what can I do in this 15-minute time frame to free up something? Um, I listen to some self-help as I'm driving home because I'm like, I'm driving home, I've got time. So what I would just say is start to think of your time differently. It's not always in blocks, and sometimes you can make deals and make some time. So at the end, you want to make sure that no matter what you do, you have a plan that leaves you with a positive balance at the end. Don't make so many withdrawals from your mom who's babysitting the kids that at the end she feels used. Make sure you're doing some investments in them. Make sure that you're not ending up in a deficit in your money resources, that you've made a plan ahead of time. So again, think of this holistically of making a life budget and using that as the buckets, and then Cariana will help you to fill. And I know I'm running a little bit long, Cariana, but I'm going to do the enough slide if that's okay.
Oh yeah, go for it. No, you're good
All
because
right.
we started late, so we're good.
So the last thing I want to talk about is defining enough. Often when we budget thinking resources are unlimited, and that's not true. You have limits on what you can do. And one of the best things you can do is define your enough. Because if you want to be the A student in every class and make it to every basketball game and make it to every dinner and never do anything wrong, what's eventually going to happen is your mental health is going to burn out, yourself is going to burn out. There's always a cost. So you need to start defining what you're enough. We live in a world where we often say winning at all costs is what we need, and we don't need to win everything. Guess what? Someone can be better at accounting than you are, and it's okay. You need to master your life. You need to master what you want to do, but you don't have to win. What you need to do is make sure you've made a determination of what is enough and strive for that goal. You can push back against the always do more. You do not need to plan the perfect baby shower with all of the items individually crafted with the ribbon on them tied perfectly. That may be what society says, but you know what? Just being with your friend is enough. You don't have to have the perfect paper where you've thought through every philosophical answer to every single question. You need to produce a paper that is good enough. I will tell you, even as an 18-year-old, I realized that 89.5% got me an A just as well as 96% was. And I was an A student. I'm one of those people. And you could be a B student if that's what you want. You can be a C student. I will even say, no one record this, but there are times when D's get degrees. I'm not supposed to say it out loud, but there are times when you're just like, I can't do any more than this. This is my enough. And that's okay. I want to say it out loud. I happened to be a traditional student. I was 18 years old. School was my only thing. I wanted to do well. So I had a different set of parameters than what other people in this room might have. But I did still figure out I could get an A with an 89.5 as easily as I could get with a 96. And so guess what I shot for? I shot for the 89.5. Now winning would be the 96. Winning would be the 98. But I had a very full life that I loved living, and it's because I said 89.5% was enough. You also need to embrace perfection. You are not perfect, and that's okay. And by accepting you're not perfect, you allow the opportunity to grow. So often, by striving for perfection, we actually totally miss the fact that we're growing people and to actually walk into it and go, I am not perfect, and that is okay. And I have an opportunity to change and to grow and to develop and walk into spaces knowing that is a huge privilege. So if you walk in and you struggle with your math assignment and you're struggling, but you figure it out. Do you know what a win that is as compared to giving up because you weren't perfect? So I would say embrace imperfection, live wholeheartedly, be humans, connect with people, enjoy who you are, find people who are your tribe. I love to play board games. I am making a Lego Lord of the Rings set. I am a total not what you expect for, oh my gosh, she's been at Global Campus for 22 years. She's an assistant vice chancellor of enrollment management. But I only got there because I chose to be myself. And by choosing to be myself, be who I am, it's allowed me opportunities for growth that I would have never imagined. And it's been a much fuller life than tried to hide those things. And finally, be really careful what stories you're telling yourself. Skippy may not be as upset if you miss the basketball game as what you think. You might be like, oh my gosh, my son Skippy is so going to be devastated if I don't show up to the basketball game. You've crafted this whole narrative about how awful it is, and you've told yourself a story that may not be true. You may be walking into a room and think, oh, that person just doesn't think I'm smart enough. You've told yourself a story that is not true. So try very hard not to craft stories that aren't based on reality and let the universe open up to you with things that you could have never imagined. Besides which, if you've ever heard of the philosophy, let them, I love it because it's like, let them think what they want to think. I have zero control over it anyways. I might as well walk into my space, into my life, and embrace it fully. So I'm going to wrap up here. But the best day of your life is one in which you decide your life is your own. No apologies, no excuses, no one to lean on, rely on, or blame. The gift is yours. It's an amazing, amazing journey, and you are alone are responsible for the quality of it. This is the day where your life really begins. And I believe college is an amazing opportunity to start to walk those words. And I'm going to hand it over to Karyana, and she's going to talk about now that you've carved out these chunks. You've figured out how to coupon on your time. You've figured out how to budget it. You've realized that your priorities need to be based off your life purpose, and you've defined what's enough. She's going to talk about how to walk through the day to day of doing college. So thanks, everybody.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I have chills because I'm just like thinking so deeply about all of these things. I hope everybody is connecting just as strongly as I am to the content that Joy is providing for us. And there's a lot of different things that are coming up in the chat on how to stay connected. So I've seen global clubs, organizations with WSU Global, join our mentorship program. Lots of different things. Student ambassadors can help with, providing resources or providing recommendations if you're, wanting some recommendations from students who've already gone through it. So lots of things that we can do to achieve getting to the place where we feel like what we've done is enough and we're getting through it. So thank you, Joy. I'm going to move on to more of some practical tools that we can kind of turn the mirror back towards ourselves and say, okay, we've heard about the theory. We love the theory. How do we put that into practice? Um, all right, so we're going to start with a poll. The first poll I have for you for this section is, when do you thrive the most? So is it early bird gets the worm, you thrive best in the morning? Maybe you're more of a brunch bird, you like, sleeping in a little bit. Midday is kind of when you focus best. Or maybe night owl gets the early bird and you focus best in the nighttime. So curious to see what you all answer. Give it a few moments here. God. Okay. Night Owl is taking the lead, y'all. I'm surprised. I am such a morning person. Like that's when I'm like locked in, get all my work done, and then I start fading around 2 or 3 o'clock.
Yeah, Kariana, I wake up naturally. I haven't had to use an alarm clock since I was 16 years old, and I wake up naturally like between 5:30 and 6 a.m. So, guys, you night owl people, I don't even know who you are,
Who
but
are
I
you?
appreciate you. But I am like that AM gal.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's see. Let's see how everybody answered real quick. Let's share the results here. Okay, so we had 50% of our people said they were night owls, and then about 2 people out of the group said, midday is kind of when they thrive. I feel like I don't know, like you wake up, you're ready for lunch or something, and you're ready to go. And then 5 people said early bird gets the worm, so they focus best in the morning. So just thinking about when you thrive best, when you do your most productive work, I think informs when you study best, when you do your best work for this program. And so thinking about that when you're building out your schedule is super important. Thank you all for sharing. All right. So then we will talk a little bit about adapting to online learning here. So definitely these are some tips from Faulkner University that I found that, really fit well with Global Campus. So definitely setting up a dedicated study space, whether that's like a little room that's, blocked off, has a door, or maybe a section of a room that's, low lights or however you like the lighting. Maybe if you like lo-fi music, somewhere where you know that you're going to be able to focus for durations of time, where you're going to need to study and focus. And there's actually a stat there, 43% more likely to stay engaged if you do have a dedicated study space. So that's quite a bit. I would recommend doing that and setting that up to be successful for your online courses here. And then setting up a consistent schedule. Like I said, I have a demon puppy, so puppies thrive best when they know what to expect. You have less stress that way, and so getting him on that schedule where it's like, okay, sleep, potty, play, eat, play, potty, sleep. It's like the same thing over and over and over. Your brain kind of knows what to expect and it gets less stressed out if you have a consistent schedule and you kind of know what you're going to do next. So highly, highly recommend that. Plan it out, write it down, all of those good things. Just make sure you have a schedule for all the things that you need to fit within your day. And then active engagement. When you get into your Canvas courses, you'll find that a lot of your courses have discussion board posts. So definitely responding to students and posting things that you are interested in instead of like just a reply that's like, yeah, great, this was awesome. Like actually taking time to, research what they are talking about and have a stance on what they're saying. I feel like you're going to get so much more out of your program if you do it that way. Active engagement with your professors, your peers, in student involvement, all great ways to feel more connected to WSU as a whole and get so much more out of your program. And then tech tools, using all the tech tools that are available to you through Global Campus, making sure you're tech ready, making sure you have tools that will help you throughout the program. Just being prepared on that side of it can help a lot in terms of staying organized and using your time efficiently. We have lots of resources on our Global Campus website as well for technology as well. And then syllabus analysis. So we'll talk a little bit about this on the next slide, but when you first start a class and you open up the syllabus, personally, I get pretty overwhelmed with reading all of it because they can be like pages and pages long. But I have this tool where you can kind of break it down into smaller steps, and then just, making it more manageable so that you're not super overwhelmed at the start of the semester. Super helpful. We also have lots of great study strategies on the Global Campus website. So looking into that and seeing how you best study, what works for you, what doesn't, and getting to know that really well. And then motivation, just remembering your why. I know we were talking about Backstreet Boys earlier, but just revisiting that all the time, even if it's like weekly or, 2 times a week, it's like, why am I doing this? And finding that deep connection of why you want to get this degree, super helpful into, if you have this big paper and you're like, oh my gosh, this feels so overwhelming, but then you bring up your motivation again and you're like, I remember now why I'm doing this. I'm going to get through this paper. Um, yeah, so that's kind of some of the strategies that Faulkner recommends. I'm going to show you a syllabus analysis example. And so this is kind of just something that you can use. You can create your own. This is one that I just kind of made up based on some UPenn, the University of Pennsylvania syllabus analysis documents, and I just created this one. But yeah, just like going through your syllabus and like saying, what do you need to do to complete for the class to get credit? So does the class have videos? Does it have recorded lectures? Does it have, a textbook that I need to read? Does it have discussion board posts and then replies? Am I going to be collaborating with other students in this class? Am I going to have, papers to write, or are there going to be quizzes, exams, all of those different things so you know what you're getting into at the start, and just having that in the back of your brain and breaking it down into smaller steps, I think is really helpful. And then just knowing like how is the class structured? So usually at Global Campus, I feel like there's a lot of different modules. They break classes up into modules, and so those can be different amounts of time. Sometimes they break them up like each module is a week, so you have these different assignments to complete in module one, which is the first week, or maybe it's like the first 2 weeks is module one. So just knowing that and then knowing what time assignments are due on the due date. So that's usually in Pacific Standard Time. Is that correct, Rebecca?
Yes. Yes, we're
Yeah.
all Pacific time.
Yeah. So just noting that
So
for
nine
every
o'clock,
student.
yeah. If you're over a dateline, that can be tricky. But yeah,
Hmm.
I honestly, I think setting your computer to Pacific time can be really, really helpful. So side note that
Hmm.
can, if you are trying to track those little deadlines, sometimes having another clock or your computer set on that time zone instead, so you don't have to constantly be doing the math in your head. Yeah.
Yeah, we have people like on the global campus team from all across the country in different time zones. So I have like all the different ones in the US, like, so I know like how to communicate with them in their time zone. So that's a great suggestion, Rebecca. But definitely knowing like if the assignment is due at 11:59 Pacific time, what time does that mean for me? Super helpful to just write that out at the beginning of the class. And then what components are optional or provide extra support? So whether that's emailing the professor, maybe they have synchronous time where a group can come explore a specific topic in detail. Maybe they have office hours or Zoom meeting times where you can drop in and ask questions about the material you're learning. Um, Maybe they have a space where you can post questions for, maybe the TA or the professor or other peers to look at, and people can go back and forth with some of the questions there. Maybe there's optional articles or additional videos or learning that you can get into if you need a little bit more on that topic. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I read that, but like, I don't understand it. I'm going to watch this YouTube video to like have them explain it a little bit more. And there should always be Canvas assistance in syllabi, but just marking all those down so upfront you know what resources you can reach out to if you run into an issue. Um, and then this also lists out what strategies will you use to learn better. So there's a bunch of different things here that are suggestions that you can utilize and just kind of like what works best for you. You know yourself best. So you can always mark those down as well. So you have a plan. Oh, sorry. Whoa. Okay. And then the last thing is how will you know it's time for a break? This is super important. Like some students will just study all the way through for 3 hours and that's how they work. But a lot of students will need a break during study sessions. So whether that's like, I just need 5 minutes where I can stretch, eat a quick snack, um, move my body a little bit, or I can draw, talk it out with somebody. Just knowing how many minutes max if you are going to take a break and what you're going to do during that break is super helpful. And maybe it's like, okay, I thought this was going to be like a 5-10 minute break, but I actually need to just step away and reschedule this study session. Super, super helpful. And I'm going to pause here and see if Rebecca, Mia, any of our student ambassadors have any input here for something like this, the syllabus analysis.
I just put a little blurb about the Pomodoro technique. I've had a lot of students use that over the years, especially if you have a learning difference, if you have ADHD, or you need some help like focusing that attention span. 25 minutes on, 5 off. 25 on, 5 off. And then you can try building that time frame. I've had a lot of students with big success using something like that. And I think especially when if we've been out of school for a while, we've sort of like moved away from having to like maybe really focus our attention on it like an abstract concept, for example. So find what works for you, but that is one that I've had students tell me has been very successful for them. So that's just a
Yeah,
little
that's awesome.
tidbit. Yeah, I'd love to hear what some of the student ambassadors have been using.
Yeah, Mia says that she's done 6 straight hours working on homework, but what she found is when she actually takes a break, her tests or quiz results come back better. than if she didn't. So that's awesome. All right. I'm going to let everybody keep posting if you have other things to say about study tips. We're going to move on to the next slide here.
Angelique has her hands raised.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Angelique.
Hi, everyone. I am a student ambassador. Some of the things that I've used in the past that help with keeping organized and trying to, utilize your time is basically calendars, listing out your priority lists as what's due first, what are the bigger projects versus the little projects. But yeah, those are calendars that are a big thing with me, organizers. And it shaves off some time from having to kind of go back and forth. It makes your process a little quicker. I don't know if he's on here or not, but Shay McFarland actually has a time tracker, which is awesome because you can utilize that and enter your times to kind of figure out what you're using your time mostly in and trying to adjust where needed. So that's something, if anybody's interested in that, I would contact Shane. But yeah, just little things, as simple as organizers and calendars can help a great deal, and listing out your assignments based on priority and what big projects that you may be struggling with, to kind of do those ones first, or get assistance if you need to. And then little ones that you can handle quick.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you brought up calendars, Anjali, because we're going to talk about that next. And then Liara, breaking down big papers into stages. We're also going to talk about that as well. So you guys are on to the right thing. It's also gratifying and encouraging to mark off the tasks. Yes, I feel like that there's a study about that. Like when you mark off tasks, it like releases serotonin in your brain and it's like a feel good thing. So love that. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. Yeah, so this is another resource from the University of Pennsylvania. It's called the um, Priority to Do Matrix. So kind of like what Joy was talking about when we're balancing your life's checkbook, kind of, you know, taking into account all the different things that are going into your life. So we can see here that quadrant one, on the left top hand side is urgent and important, so do it now. This would be like your child is sick and needs immediate care, or maybe you have a work deadline that you need to meet today. Something like that that needs to be done quickly and right away would go in that quadrant. And then quadrant two would be, it's important, but it's not urgent, so you can schedule it. So example, maybe like you're planning your dream vacation to Japan, like me, or you're working on a big project that's due next month. Those are kind of more of the long-term goals, personal growth, but you have time to complete them. And then, oh, sorry. Okay, and then quadrant three is urgent but not important, so you can delegate it. So an example of that would be your team needs someone to send out a meeting reminder email in the next 10 minutes. It's time sensitive, but you can delegate that to an assistant or a teammate. So things that are important, but other people can take those on. Quadrant four is it's not urgent and it's not important, so you can eliminate it. So example, scrolling TikTok for 3 hours, watching videos of cats wearing sunglasses. That's fun, but like it's not urgent and it's not important, so you can definitely take that out if you're running short on time. Kind of just those distractions that don't really add value to your life is kind of that quadrant there. So just thinking about those things, and putting those, writing those out sometimes can be very helpful when thinking about time management. All right, and then we'll go to the next slide here. We have more tools here. So this is building flexibility into study plans. So this kind of just asks, the important questions like, what tasks matter the most to me? If I only get one thing done today, what would it be? So that kind of like tells you what is the most important, what's the most pressing thing for you right now. So there's lots of questions on here that you all can have. We're going to send out these slides afterwards so you have all these resources, but just kind of gets your brain thinking, how can I sort of start creating my to-do matrix chart? and what are the things that I need to think about in terms of prioritization. All right. And then we actually have another poll for you real quick. So we talked about 3 different tools here. Which one are you most likely to use if you had to pick one? All right, we got priority to do matrix. We have the syllabus analysis sheet as well. A lot of priority to do matrix though. Almost
I
everybody's
love how
answered.
easy you made it sound, Kariana. Like if it's not important, doesn't need to be done.
I know, I'm like,
Just don't do
not
it.
important. No, just do it. Check
And
it
I'm
out.
like, wait, I don't need to watch people get haircuts on Instagram for 30 minutes.
Mine is bad. Like for some reason, like I watch the Kardashian. Like I always get the Kardashians coming up on my phone, and then I'm like, why is Kylie doing that?
Oh
Why
gosh, and
is
then you're down a rabbit hole and you're like, I just did a
yeah.
deep dive that I didn't even care about.
I know, I'm like, why? I'm not invested in this family, but like, why?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead and end the poll and we'll share the results real quick. So it looks like most people love the to-do matrix, so definitely use that when you're thinking about time management. All of these will be available to you as well. Okay, so then move on to the next one here. I know we're getting close on time, so I'm gonna try and get through the rest of this. We only have a couple more slides left. So just some more success tips. This is from the WSU Global Campus website. So breaking tasks into smaller steps, right? So I think yeah, one of the student ambassadors was talking about this earlier. Just kind of like breaking things down, and this is going to be common for this session is like, so it's not overwhelming, for like a paper, if you break it down into like brainstorming and then drafting and then editing and then when you're going to publish. So those different steps and having those on your calendar can be super helpful so that it's just bite-sized, manageable. Using calendars and planners, another student ambassador recommended this as well. Super important if you want to use a physical calendar or a digital calendar, totally up to you, whichever one's better, but just make sure you have a calendar that you're using. And then I'd say avoid multitasking. So trying to do 2 things at once can be pretty hard. I always find that the work that I do when I'm multitasking is not as great as if I were just doing the one thing. All right. Okay, and then just a couple more things here. So backward planning from deadlines. So that's kind of what we talked about is like, when is the final version of a thing due? You can put that on your calendar and then work backwards. So like, what appointments do I have in between now and then? And how can I break down, when's the due date for the brainstorming and when's the due date for the publishing and when's the due date for the editing? So just breaking those down and planning backwards from those deadlines is super helpful. And adding buffer time, just overestimate how long something might take so that if you get done early, you have gym time or you have food time or you have hangout time or you have TV time instead of using that for homework. And then weekly review and adjust so you can see how things are going that week and then make adjustments as needed. Um, let's see here. And then we have a chat activity. So it is the first week of spring classes. Let's identify your top 3 priorities this week and how do you all think you will budget your time? We'll just take a couple minutes here before we close up. Oh, go ahead, Joy.
I was just going to say, why don't you move to the next slide and people can put their stuff in there as we're looking at the resources available to us.
For sure. Okay, yeah. So we have some responses coming in, so thank you for that. But like I said, we have all of the resources here. So we have skills for success, we have time management, all WSU resources. We have some University of Penn resources for the proactive time management with, the priority to-do list and the syllabus analysis on there, and then also mental health and well-being, so timely care as well. So getting some great responses in there. So getting confident in my assignment due dates, weekly tasks, ensure access to all text materials, and completing this week's tasks. setting a pattern of due dates and when I'm studying for which class alongside managing my work schedule and the schedule of the kiddos in the house. I love all of that. I think we'll have some similar responses there for time management and what our plans are for this week. So we actually are done. We have some contact information. Like we said at the beginning, we have a whole team at Global Campus of people that want to support you, who are cheering for you, rooting for you to succeed. So definitely save this phone number for student services. You can reach out, you can call, email, get answers. Don't hesitate to reach out because there are people that want to see you succeed. So, and then always remembering your why. So revisiting that every week, every couple days is helpful to get through this program, and just keeping that in the back of your mind and just pushing through is super helpful. And then I did want to revisit our poll from earlier. At the beginning of the session, we asked which goals are you most excited to learn about. So we'll see here how we did and which ones you feel like you're walking away with at the end of the session here. All right. A lot of refocusing on actionable strategies and feeling more confident. Yay. Resetting expectations about balance. All right. So we'll go ahead and end the poll here and share the results. And then we do have lots of other Week of Welcome events. I know we're done with this one and thank you all for coming. But I'll just turn it over to Mia real quick to talk about the other events that we have this week.
Yeah. All right. Since we are talking about resources, so make sure to come to tomorrow's event. It's academic resources. We have library services, tutoring, we have career services, and we also have Center for Civic Engagement. And I forget the other one, but that would be for tomorrow at 6 p.m. And then on Thursday is financial resources. So you have financial advisor, Jordan Creedon will be there. Coog Money Matters will be there. We will have the study abroad if you are interested to study abroad. And then we also have our student government for any grocery vouchers and reimbursement programs that they offer. And also the Cyber Coog Fitness. So yeah, I dropped in the link for Week of Welcome so you can register for the rest of the events for this week. So yeah, and Wednesday is student involvement. If you want to be involved in student involvement and you want to apply for a paid position, you can come to Wednesday's Week of Welcome event because we will be talking about some openings that will be coming up this spring, actually, for the next academic year. So yeah. And if you have any questions, just email us an email to global.connections@wsu.edu. So I'm going to drop it in the chat. And also, I do want to say that by attending this event, you get 15 involvement points. And so to learn more about involvement points, I will drop the link for you to visit our student involvement platform and learn about all the other opportunities that you can avail that's offered for you to make sure that you have a good college experience, even if you're doing it virtually, because we do have a robust community at Global Campus. You may not know it yet, but once you get engaged with us, we get involved with us, you will find that, wow, there is actually a lot going on at Global Campus. It's not just me just looking at my screen or doing things. So yeah, please check out those links that I'm gonna drop soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Mia. And like I think somebody said in the chat, there is a session if you wanted to pop over mindfulness after this, after you already learned about yourself, did some reflecting, you can pop over to mindfulness if you'd like, and jump on any of the rest of the Week of Welcome events this week. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We are going to hop off for now, but definitely email, call, text, whatever you need. If you do have any questions, we're here for you. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.